Centerpoint Archery, celebrating the timeless traditions of bow hunting. Inline vertical crossbows and draw lock. For bow hunters and target shooters worldwide, Crossbow Accessory Company, manufacturing safe and portable crossbow decocking system. And Taiwee, live your passion, Taiwee. Raven Crossbows, relentless innovation, that's the Raven way. And Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota, aim true and hunt free. Hey y'all, welcome to Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota's podcast. Today's podcast is going to be on making the switch, transitioning from whatever you're hunting with crossbows for deer hunting. So welcome to Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota. This podcast is where we're going to dive into the heart of deer hunting, gear, tactics, and the thrill of the chase. And I'm your host, Michael Keeler, owner and creator of Crossbows Hunters of Minnesota. And today we're tackling a hot topic in the hunting world. I think it is anyways. Transitioning over from firearms or your conventional compound bows to crossbows. You know, it's really becoming the go-to choice for both seasoned hunters and newcomers. And whether you're a rifle hunter or looking for a new challenge, or a newbie stepping into the deer woods for the first time, this episode is for you. So let's grab a cup of coffee, settle in your stand, and let's get started. So crossbows, you know, they are taking the deer hunting world by storm in 2025, and really that's no surprise to me. Well, why is that? Well, models like the Crossbow, Sniper G4D, and a Raven R29X, they're generating some serious buzz in the crossbow world. You know, we're talking speeds of 415 per foot, with 1-inch groups at 50 yards and whisper quiet shots. So, I mean, you know, with decimals around 100, these really aren't your grandpa's crossbows. They're high-tech, precise, and hunter-friendly. So it makes it really easy for people to transition over into crossbow hunting. But what's really, you know, what is really driving the folks to make the switch, you know, and how can hunters jump into crossbow hunting with confidence? Well, that's kind of what this podcast is all about. So I'm going to go through some things here. First of all, you know, we'll get into discussing why you should switch to a crossbow. You know, and then we'll break it down into, I think, like rifle hunters and compound bow hunters, go through some tips and stuff like that. You'll see. Should be really informational and something I think everyone can use that's considering this. So first of all, why switch over to a crossbow? Well, first let's talk about why seasoned hunters are trading in their rifles or compound bows for crossbows. Well, for firearm hunters, the appeal is often about extending their hunting season. You know, in many states, crossbows are legal during archery only seasons. You know, like we are here in Minnesota, we can hunt with our crossbows during the entire archery season. So that gives you more time in the field. Plus, they offer a new challenge for a firearm hunter. You know, you got to get closer to the deer, typically 30 to 40 yards. You need to focus on honing your stalking skills and stand placement skills, along with your woodmanship. So that's appealing to most hunters, especially your firearm hunters. Now, for traditional bow hunters, crossbows can be a real game changer, especially if you're dealing with physical limitations. Drawing a crossbow or a recurve bow requires a lot of strength and practice. But with crossbows, the system that they have, like the cocking mechanisms on the center point sniper G4D, makes it easier to cock and shoot without straining your shoulders and back and that. So that's another reason why, you know, and I know for myself, I was a compound bow hunter, you know, from the mid 80s all the way into about 5 years ago I switched over to a crossbow because of that. So that's another reason why I think traditional bow hunters are switching over to crossbows. So I saw a post from a member the other day who said, you know, I'm paraphrasing this, but they switched over to a crossbow at 55 after years of hunting with a recurve, and wish they had done it sooner because they were getting the same thrill but less pain. And that's really, you know, I hear that a lot from members and from other hunters, but it's you know, it's not just about the ease. Crossbows deliver real good accuracy, you know, with that archery stealth to it. So the Raven 29 R29X, for example, averages a one inch groups at 50 yards, like we were saying, and in recent field tests, you know, and that's tight enough to ensure clean, ethical kills, which is a big deal for hunters who prioritize their humane harvests. So that's another reason why, an example why people are switching over from your traditional archery equipment into a crossbow. Now, why are new hunters choosing crossbows? Well, let's talk about that for a minute. If you're new to deer hunting, crossbows are a fantastic entry point. Why is that? Well, they're easier to learn than a traditional bow. You don't need months of practice to build that muscle memory for drawing and holding your, say, 60-pound compound bow. With your crossbows, you can cock it, load an arrow, aim and shoot much like a rifle. But it's quieter, and you're at, you know, you get that close range to the deer vibe for archery, and your learning curve is shorter, but the payoffs, they're pretty huge. Take the center point sniper G4D. It's priced around $499, making it accessible, and still hits 400 feet per second, you know, with solid broadhead accuracy. So for a new hunter, this means that they can focus on learning deer behavior, scouting, shot placement, without wrestling with complex gear, and that really helps them as far as their skills as a deer hunter. And another reason I think that some of the newbies love the crossbows is because of confidence. You know how you feel when you're shooting a good group, you know, and the precision of these modern crossbows paired with the quality of the scopes that are on them, man, it lets you take ethical shots at responsible distances, and a beginner can feel confident and ready to hunt within a few range sessions, you know, which isn't always true with your traditional bows. So that's another I feel is another reason why that's appealing to someone just getting into archery hunting. So the challenges of transitioning, I should say, and how to overcome them is another topic too that's interesting here. Okay, so crossbows sound awesome, but let's be real, making that switch isn't always seamless. For your firearm hunters, the biggest adjustment is going to be your range. You're used to shooting, say, 100, 200-yard shots with a rifle, but with your crossbow, it maxes out about, well, for me it's 40 yards, but 50, 60 yards for ethical deer hunting. That means rethinking, like your setup. Your stand has to be closer. You're going to need better scent control. You got to master that art of staying still when that buck's really close. So your woodmanship skills are redefined a little bit too, but and that's a good thing in a way too. It makes you a better hunter. For traditional bow hunters, the challenge I see is often mental. And I even question this when I switched over, but some peers feel like crossbows are cheating. But here's the thing, hunting isn't about who's got the toughest gear. It's about connecting with nature and harvesting an animal responsibly. And crossbows still require skill, and practice and woodmanship. One member put it perfectly. He said, crossbows, longbows, rifles, it doesn't really matter. If you're out there reading the sign and outsmarting deer, you're hunting. So for new hunters, the biggest hurdle is gear and overcoming that newness of their gear. With so many options, Centerpoint, Raven, you got Barnett, Excalibur, how do you choose? A crossbow, that is a whole nother podcast. My advice is, for just a short little advice here, would be start with your budget and prioritize accuracy and ease of use. So whatever you're transitioning or starting new, I think I have some tips for you to crush it here with your crossbow. These are things that I did when I started, and I still do a lot of them today. So my first tip on this would be to practice, practice, practice. Even with a crossbow's ease, you need range time. Shoot it at 20, 30, 40 yards to understand your setup. Use the same broadheads you use while hunting, whether they're mechanicals like Rage or a fixed broadhead like Muzzy, and they all work really great at high speeds crossbows. Number two would be tune your gear. Make sure your arrows are matched to your crossbow specs. Now, your manufacturers always recommend a specific arrow weights and for the best performance. Example, your Raven 29 R29X, they pair it with a 400 grain arrow for consistent accuracy. So just check that, but make sure you're setting up and using the correct specs for your crossbow. And number three, focus on your shot placement. Crossbows are deadly, but deer vitals are small. Like Ted Nugent says, aim small, miss small. Aim for that heart and lung area, just behind the shoulder there, and practice shooting from the positions you're going to hunt in, whether that's elevated like a deer stand or on the ground, and try to mimic those real hunting scenarios. Number four tip from Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota would be your technology. Try to leverage that technology. Modern crossbows come with killer optics. The scopes on models like your 10-point have range compensating reticles. So you really need to learn how to use them. Some of these scopes have built-in rangefinders now. Some of them have speed rings to set at the speed of your crossbow. So take advantage of that, but also learn how to use them. Number five would be join a community. Check out Crossbow Hunters of Minnesota on Facebook. We're on Spotify and YouTube. We have some pretty good discussions on real-world advice as far as hunting. Hunters are always sharing tips on everything from broadhead selection to silencing accessories for your crossbows. It's really a little gold mine of information for learning. So I suggest that that would be a good place to get information from. So now we're going to Q&A section this week. We have a listener, a couple of them that had asked questions in our comment area on our last podcast, so I'm going to try and answer those now. So we got some really great questions actually from these listeners. First up was Jake from Ohio, and he asked, I'm a rifle hunter, will a crossbow feel too different to me? That's a great question, Jake, but really the aiming and the trigger pull will feel very familiar, but you'll need to get comfortable with your shorter ranges and your probably quicker shots, and I would say start practicing, and shoot at 20 to 40 yards so you'll feel comfortable with that distance, and you'll feel like a pro in no time. Again, a rifle hunter is used to shooting 100, 200, 300 yards, and so that yardage change is going to be your biggest hurdle there. Sarah from Michigan asks, I'm new to hunting and want a crossbow under $1,000. Any recommendations? Well, Sarah, I would say there's a lot of options for under $1,000 now that have really good crossbows. I would check out Barnett and they have a Hyper Raptor BCX that's around 700 to 1,000. It's 400 feet per second. A lot of these crossbows out there, Centerpoint has them, and Raven, and there's just a ton of them out there to choose from. My recommendation again is to go into a range and shoot a few, get a feel for them, and try to pick something that fits you and also doesn't break the bank. A lot of those pro shops can help you down that road too. So you get that crossbow figured out and you pair that with a good broadhead and you'll be set. So thanks for those questions, though. They're interesting, and I enjoy having them. So if you want to send us a question, just drop it in the comment area, or you can email it to us at cvhom@yahoo.com, and we'll tackle it on our next episode. So I think I'm going to wrap this up now, this podcast for this week. Crossbows are changing the game for deer hunters. There's no doubt about that. Whether you're a seasoned pro or you're looking for a new challenge, or even a beginner, wanting to get into the deer hunting, models like your Centerpoint Sniper, G4D, and Raven R29X are leading the charge with speed, accuracy, and stealth. So there is a lot of good crossbow manufacturers out there, but the real magic happens when you put in the time to master your gear and your woodmanship. Get out in the woods and start to actually hunt. So next week we're diving into scent control strategies for bow hunting, and trust me, you're not going to want to miss that one. It's going to be pretty informative. I'm going to try to get a guest to appear with me on that show, Adam McDermott, and we're going to discuss that scent control and just different strategies on that and that. So But if you enjoyed this episode, hey, hit the subscribe button, leave us a review, share it with your hunting buddies. Follow us on Facebook or on YouTube or Spotify for our latest gear talk and hunting tips. So that's about all I got this week. So until next time, always remember, aim true and hunt free.